Hi guys, welcome back. It's Harvey Lowe, and I'm doing yet another episode on finishing the Millennium Falcon. And Dave's with me here in GSM. We can actually use an acronym now.
GSM. Garage Studio Modelers.
Garage Studio Modelers. So thank you, Dave, again for having me in the garage. And just going to go over the next steps in the modeling process here on my Millennium Falcon. And I'll be talking a bit about filters today. And washes. Hey, your BT7 looks great, by the way.
Oh, thank you,
right?
Thank you. Yeah, so is it. The Falcon's really coming along. That's an impressive vehicle.
Thank you. So the last episodes covered basically, Dave. I went over the modulation, which you do so well, and I'll go over it in a little bit more detail in a moment. But that's basically where the model is at now, and I think it's ready at the stage of weathering. Now that I have all my filters here, and I'll show you a little bit about that, and I'll talk a bit about washes. But that's basically what it looks like just by pure modulation.
That's beautiful. That's really stunning.
Thank you.
Really coming along nicely.
Yeah, it's coming along great. So we'll begin in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so what I've done since the last episode is I've finished with the deckling. And you can see that I've applied the kit decals, which were not pretty bad. They were pretty good, actually. I've actually used them. Now, could I have painted these on? I probably could have, and I could have done the hairspray technique. But, you know, the decals are really good in showing the little damage and effects, so I use those. So, in essence, perhaps I'm going to use a hairspray technique a little later, and we can explain that, but I haven't decided yet. So, the model now has all the decals on. And when I put the decals on, I overcoated it with another layer of Pledge Future Floor Wax Gloss. I like the idea of sandwiching decals with a gloss coat to put them on, and then a gloss coat on top of them. Whether you use a gloss coat or not is entirely up to you, but I just like the protection of the decals with another gloss coat on top. You can see that there's some small little decals here, some details. I actually didn't use all of the decals that the kit provided, and I decided not to because some of them were so small that I found that when I put them on the model, maybe it was the Solvaset, but they would start to dissolve a bit, and I thought, well, sometimes you're taking a risk if you want to enter your model in a contest, and you don't have to use them all. It's a sci-fi model anyway, so I didn't use those tiny ones that I felt would detract from the model because they seem to react with the decal setting solution. I also painted little details right or wrong on the Millennium Falcon using Vallejo acrylics, just little details. So when you back up on the model, you can see these little detailed effects here. Some of the small decals, again, I did use, but for the most part, I thought that was good enough. I did love these red decals, by the way, so I did add those. And this is basically what you see. Now, after, I didn't show this on camera, but I also flat coated this model, and I'll explain why in a moment. After the top coat of the Future Floor Wax to protect the decals, I recoated the whole model using Model Master Acryl flat. Now, I do love that stuff. And I basically used the Model Master Acryl Flat with their brand thinner just to give it a flat coat.
How long did you let the Future dry before you put the flat coat on top of it?
That's a good question. I mentioned earlier that the Solvaset seems to have a reaction, Dave, with the undercoating Future. And in talking with some other great models like John Wong of our club in IPMS, he lets the stuff dry for about a week. Now, what I found is if I let it dry for 48 hours, it seemed to be good enough. But yes, you do have to let it dry. You don't thin it with anything, as I said earlier, but when you do apply it, I would let it dry a lot longer. Now, this is basically removes, so you can get at the battery pack for the lights, and we'll talk a little about that later. Now, when you're doing your weathering, you need to begin thinking about how you're going to go about doing it. There's a couple of things that I think about. First of all, to kind of get a sense on what colors you're going to use for weathering. Some colors go nicely together, some don't. So you need to think about that. And I'm doing the weathering on this model as I go along, and I thought that's probably a better way to show you guys that we're all human, and if it works on this model, it's great. If it doesn't, but if you really want to be careful, I would test your weathering colors on a separate palette and not on your final model. But what we're going to do for fun is let's just try a bunch of things. I'm going to start with filters, and we're going to see how it looks on this kind of like gray beige palette. And we'll just play it by ear, which is what I think is great about this series. We're not rehearsing anything prior. We're just going to see how it turns out.
It's all live.
It's all live, right? And I think I mentioned this before. We don't do a lot of takes, Dave. We just go out with the first one, second one at the most.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So I'll be back in a moment to talk about filters. Okay. Filters. I hope everyone, well, maybe I should back up a bit and talk a bit about what filters are and not assume that people know what they are. A filter is a new technique to modeling that's been around, what, Dave, a couple of years now, I think? Maybe longer than that?
Yeah, maybe a good 7, 8, 9, 10 years almost.
Yeah. Basically, you're using filters to change the tone of the base color. Maybe I'm not explaining it right, but it's kind of like the use of a filter in taking a photography, where you're applying a blue lens to change the tonation of the base, and that's what we're going to do. Why do you want to use filters? Well, I think that filters provide another level of dimension and depth to a model. It is different than a wash. Filters tend to change the entire surface of this color to a different tone of that color, whereas a wash goes into the details, and it's a little bit different. So here's the trick. When I use filters, I always apply filters to a very flat finish, and that's why I recoated the model with Model Master Aqua Flat. Filters do not work well on gloss finishes, because when you apply a filter to a gloss finish, it becomes a wash. And because they're already so thin, it begins to puddle, and you get those tide marks that Dave talked about as well on his BT7 episode. So always apply a filter to a flat finish. Now, the filters, let's move over here. And you can see that I've got a whole bunch here. And again, I'm experimenting on this model, as I said earlier, where normally I would kind of test out the colors and what they look like. Now, some of these are old, some of these are new, some of the labels have come off. By the way, you can see I put an F on the caps of these. Now, I have these all in a drawer because I have other products with the same type of bottle, and they're more washes. So it's just easier for me to organize my colors in my paint bins, so I know which ones are filters, I know which ones are washes. I just put an F there. Now, you can see that these colors include a broad range of variations, from some grays to some greens to some dark browns. And some people usually get the question asked that, well, what colors do you use on a filter? That's entirely up to you. It really depends on your eye of the modeling, and this is where modeling becomes an art. So when you're choosing a filter, think about what filter would look good over, in this case, a base of this, I guess you could call it a gray, whitish, light beigeish tone. And you can see there's lots happening here. So it's really entirely up to you. What would an orange filter look on top of this? What would a green one look? That's entirely up to you. Because this is a science fiction model, I think you can get a little bit more leeway in determining what filter that you do use. But I've decided to, well, you know what? Let's use a bunch of different colors, see what works, see what doesn't work, and we'll play it by ear. Now, first thing you start with filters. I don't know, Dave, whether you have the same issue I have with these, but I find that when I use these filters, they settle quickly in the bottle.
They do.
Right? Yeah. So when I'm using these, not only am I shaking them a lot, but I'm finding that I have to reshake them. Now, hear that rattle in there? I put one of these, the BBs, you know those little BBs you find with those BB guns? I put one in there, and it just helps shake it. Right? You can hear it rattle around. I also find that some of these filters are I don't know if it's intentional. Some of them are thicker, some of them are thinner, right?
Yeah, the quality's all over the place.
Right?
I find, yeah.
I mean, they're great stuff.
They are, and they're very, like, out of the bottle like that. They're extremely convenient to use.
Yeah.
Now, for the Millennium Falcon here, Harv, are you planning to put? Because I think filters can do a couple of different things. So like for example, I think when I first started using filters, it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like if I was doing a multi-tone camouflage, like a 3-tone German Lakewood camouflage,
Yeah.
you would put a filter on there to try and unite the colors
Uh-huh.
and bring everything together.
Yes. Yes.
But in some vehicles, I've used filters, like on the BT7, I've used filters to create different tones of color on different panels, right? So it's the opposite thing. You're kind of breaking it up as opposed to unifying.
That's a very good point. And you know what? Why don't we do that today? I'll use the filters on some panels, and maybe we'll use some to kind of blend things together.
Sure.
Right?
So it's an experiment.
It's an experiment, right?
Love it.
So look at this. I shook this. Look, there's still stuff on it. See? It just doesn't, like, you need something to really mix it. Don't just assume that shaking it will do. Now, our mutual friend Sandy McCurry, Dave, you gave him one of those mixers, those, what do you call those, stir things?
Yeah, one of those paint stirrers.
Paint stirrers. Well, Sandy was talking about that all day yesterday.
Yes, he was.
Right, Sandy? I hope you're watching this, but I'm using this coffee stick. No, I know it's not as good as your stir, but we'll just do that.
We'll get you there.
We'll get you there. So let me just mix up this one. Now let's start with your comment where, that's why you know that this is all ad lib. We're gonna let's start to use this. This is actually warm gray for Panzer gray, right? See that? You zoom in there, Robert. Let's start with that. Why am I starting with the gray? Well, the model's gray. So let's see what happens when we apply the single filter to a bunch of panel lines. And again, you know, if you're doing this on a model of yours, you can either take the chance that I'm taking, or you can try to experiment on a palette before you go. Now, I'm hoping that this is all mixed up with the stir stick. These are just coffee sticks, you know, whatever.
Now you could. Now these Sin filters have been around forever, right? These were, I think, the initial filters
Yes.
that were released way back when they
Way
first
back.
came out.
Yes.
And then Meg has gotten into it, AK's gotten
Yes.
into it, and you can always create. You can always make your own from oils.
You can, and I'm going to show you that in a moment too. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Right? I so far I haven't found that they have a, maybe they do have a shelf life, but so far these are about, I think, 3-4 years old. I'm still using them, right? Okay, so just your typical, I use a flat brush for this. Now, where do I start? Well, you look at the model and you say, well, what areas do I want to tone down and blend? Maybe these ones. You can see that. Remember I applied bright white? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, when I finished with the modulation off camera, I loaded up my airbrush with a bit more beige. And I went back over some of these other you can't really see it. Maybe you can. I went back with here's some areas where I went back with beige. And I'm going back and layering, right?
Is that more for blending, or?
Yeah, I thought, this area is too white.
I see.
And so I went back with the airbrush and misted on some more beige. So you can see it's not a 1, 2, 3 step. It's a 1, 3, 2, 4, back to
and forth,
1,
yeah.
until you get the effect that you want. And this is all airbrush modulation right now. As I mentioned, just a reminder, these different tones are only played with the original base color of that beige white that I mentioned, pure white and some beige. That's it. And you can get the variation in tone by the thickness of the paint and the distance to the surface of the model. And with those two variations, you can get lots of variation in color by only using essentially 2 or 3 colors.
Oh, that's
so,
fantastic.
yeah, let's start with this. Now, I've loaded the brush with the filter. The filters, generally, I wouldn't just throw them on. I get them fairly light just to see what the tone. Now, this may or may not have any effect. Now, what I find with these, because they settle a lot, go right down to the bottom of the filter.
But do you just apply it wet, or do you unload the brush a little bit, or?
I'm applying this one wet because I'm finding, let's see what happens. But I would prefer to unload it. But let's just see, because as I'm going on right now, I don't see a lot of difference in this one, right? Like from my angle,
Yeah, there is a bit of a
there's a
difference.
bit of a difference, but let's put it on wet, because now look, when you put it on wet, let's put it on wet. Right? You see the puddling?
Yeah.
That's not what you want, unless that's the effect you want. Because this is on a flat surface, you could let this dry a bit, just a bit with a hairdryer, and then streak it. It's up to you. But since I'm using a filter, I want to change the whole tone, and I want to avoid that. So I do want to unload the brush.
Yeah.
But in this case, let's just see what the filters. It's doing there is a tone change in the model. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's there.
It's there. Whether you want that subtleness or not, that's up to you. This is where it becomes an art.
But you can build it up. I mean,
yeah.
you can go very light on it, see what it's like, let it dry, and
yep.
then hit it.
Yep.
Let it set, and then come back over. Right?
So I'm just absolutely. But I do find that with filters, I find that the effect gets lost after maybe 5 or 6 filters.
Yeah.
Like you just lost it.
Yeah, I usually do 2 or 3. Max, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, dude.
Yeah.
So I've just done it on this segment here. See? And to my eye, it is changing it a bit.
Yeah.
Right?
The
right?
2 panel that are kitty corner to one another, yeah.
Right.
Were the same color. Now the one on the left is a little darker, right?
It's a tiny bit darker. Yeah. It is. Yeah. And that effect is entirely up to you. By the way, I did forget to mention that back to the decals. See that this is a decal. And there's a couple of decal, yeah, or décalé for French. So French Canadian. So this one is also a gray one. I didn't use all these pure gray decals because I modulated some panels and I wanted to keep that effect. So I minimized the use of the kit pure gray decal because it just covered all of the
so you didn't use all of them?
I didn't use all of them. See, it's up to you. Now this is drying, and that's actually not bad. The way you want filters to dry is you don't want any puddling. And so far, when I look at this, and I'm just letting the air dry, we have a hair dryer here, it's drying nicely. It's not bad.
Yeah,
it's not
overpowering. You can, to your point about, you can incorporate some streaking effects. Well, that's really not what filters are for.
That's right, but you can.
They're more just like,
yeah.
Put them on uniform, light coats, I find, and yeah.
Right? You're absolutely right, but you can use different...
experiment.
You can experiment. So this one's now going to be, let's see, I'm going to use dark yellow. I don't know, let's see how that goes. And let's keep to this theme right now of changing the whole wedge
yeah.
with different colors, and let's do the one next to it. Now this, you see these? I find these caps stick.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe these are just older ones and they fixed it. Again, go in with a little stir stick, and I got a BB in here and shake it up a bit more. And these do have an odor to them, so you might want to, if you're working in an enclosed area, keep the window open. I'm using the same brush right now, but I mean, if you're being picky, you could use a different brush. Go to the bottom of the bottle and mix it up because it tends to settle. Offload the brown. Now this one's a pretty dark brown. I don't know how it's going to go, but let's see. Right? This one, look, this one you can tell there's a lot more color in it. See? I can see from my angle there's a lot more to this one.
Well, it's a darker.
It's a darker one. See, that's pretty dramatic. Now this one, it's not streaking, so you want to kind of go different angles, apply it. Don't just go in one direction. Don't let it build up. Try to get it on evenly. And again, it's got to go on a flat surface, not a semi gloss, but a pure flat finish. I can already see the differences here.
Yeah.
There's a definite brown to that, eh?
It's subtle, but it's there.
It's there. Now, if I wanted to, I could take this. Well, this hasn't fully dried yet, but, let's say I wanted to just do this guy. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen, right? You can experiment.
Yeah, it depends what depends what you want to do with it, right? If you're trying to unify or break things up.
I like that word.
Yeah.
We're unifying right now. There was the gray, and here is this yellow, dark yellow here, and there's definitely a tone difference. Now, if you're doing a large palette like this, and you're doing this type of technique, I would kind of spread this around the whole model to even it out. So in other words, I wouldn't just, let's just do this area. I think that's where the model becomes uneven. So while it's random, it's not random. So if I'm going to do this here, let's do it over here. You know what I mean? Now this is going on pretty thick. Let's actually do it on purpose. Let's just slobber it on. Now you see that it's even though this is a flat coated surface, it's still building in some of these creases. I have no idea what that's going to look like though when it dries. And I'm going to take this off because I'm going to use washes for that later, which go on a gloss surface to ensure that the paint stays in the crevices. So for now, could it act as a wash? Maybe it could, but I'm not going to take that chance.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right?
So when you, just jumping ahead a little bit here,
Yeah.
or when you get to the point where you apply washes, would you just flat coated this
Yep.
for the purposes of the filters?
Yes.
Would you gloss coat it again for the purpose?
Exactly.
You would.
I would.
Wow.
I would gloss coat. Now, I've heard you say that you like to apply washes to a flat. Do you?
I'm again, personal preference. I'm just a big believer in the less coats of stuff you throw in your model, the better.
That's true.
So I would just apply the wash. The nice thing about applying them on the gloss is that they'll flow better.
Yes.
And there's typically less cleanup.
That's true.
Right, so there's less you have to go back and remove because they get stuck in the flat surface.
That's true.
But I just think to me that would be a better trade-off than. But that's me, right? That's just my preference.
As we're having this, you see, we're not rehearsing this. If you do that, Dave, it also thinks it gives you a different effect too. So if I was to apply, and I've seen you apply the washes on your flat and even semi-gloss surfaces, they look great. I also find that you can do that for a different effect, because if you apply a wash on a pure gloss finish, it's only going to go in those areas,
and it's convenient for that.
Yeah,
that's why people use gloss surfaces, because it's more convenient that way.
So, in fact, while we're on that, I've done this intentionally on this model. These areas of exposed, I guess, in interior details, I've actually left those in gloss for this for this episode. So they're going to do the wash, and now it's hard to tell, but this is left in pure gloss. Okay, just this area. This is flat.
Perfect.
And let's see what happens. Yep. If that was a left flat, I think the wash effect would be slightly different. It would be a little bit more grittier, right?
Yeah, there'd be more cleanup involved, I think.
Yeah. So this one, you see, there's definitely this dark. What color is this again? This is dark yellow, brown for dark yellow. It's it's P241, or you can get an equivalent new one. This one has a dramatic effect, more so than this. What is this here? Dark gray.
Now, part of that, though, is because you've applied it thicker. On that other
yeah,
on that other wedge, right?
Look, you're right. I applied it a lot here, less here.
Yeah.
And you can definitely, at least, maybe what I will do, Robert, is I'll give you some pictures photo booths so you can see it, and we'll post those as well along with this episode, perhaps, so that people can see the color differentiation, which may be hard. We're going to get some new lights, guys, to add to our episodes. So I like that. That's not bad. That's very subtle. But because I like this, I'm going to use more. So let's go down here. Let's just see. You're experimenting. Let's just throw that on pretty thick. And this one's going over the decal, but that's being protected with the future floor wax. You can follow the panel lines on this one. See, that's definitely.
Yeah, that's a very pronounced effect.
That's very
because you've put it on. I mean, it's a darker color.
Yeah.
A and B, you've applied it a little thicker than on the first two you did.
Totally.
Yeah.
So this gun is also left in a pure gloss. And now watch, if I apply the filter to a pure gloss, see it acts as a wash.
Yeah.
It's not. It
kind of beads up and goes into.
Yeah, and it's going into the crevices. So that's why I prefer to use a flat color for the filters. So now let's be done with this one, and let's be bold, and I've used gray. I've used dark brown. What's this one? This one. Ooh, this one is green. I have no idea what this will look like on the model.
Let's try her out.
And if it doesn't work out, I'm going to blame you.
Well, you can always remove it.
I can always remove it.
It's the nice thing about it.
Yeah, you can. If you don't like this effect right now, just take your any type of, like, you could take the enamel thinners from Humbrol. You can just kind of wipe that off. But so far, it's not bad. Now, I applied this one fairly heavily, Rob. You can zoom in. There's a bit of streaking going on there. It's not bad. I mean, I could totally get rid of it. See there. I'm removing it now because I've kept this. I could streak it, or I could just reapply it smoothly so it's overall. It's up to you. This one's on thick, so you can take a dry brush and you can actually use this filter because it's going on a flat surface as streaking. That's entirely up to you. Right? Let's just leave it for that. I like that contrast. And Dave, you mentioned early in your episode, keep the contrast because as you apply more of this, you don't want a blended color because you'll lose all that work that you did earlier.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in having different panels.
Yep.
But it depends. It depends on the effect you're looking for.
And there's no secret to this stage. It's what looks right to your eye, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I think so.
It's not like, oh, let's just thin this by 20%. Let's only use it here. Whatever looks right to you. And that's where it becomes an art of modeling that distinguishes one person's work from another.
Yeah. I think, though, if you're new to filters, the nice thing about getting the bottled products is it's out of the bottle, you can use them.
Yeah.
But I would start with applying them in light coats, and then as you get more comfortable with it, then if you want to go heavier, like you did on a couple of those panels, then you can do that. But start, like, you can always build it up, right?
Yep, totally. Always work in a modeling room with good lighting. I like these LEDs. I just bought a new LED over Christmas where it's the new, the magnifying and it's got LEDs. Apparently they're the new ones, and I like them better than the old fluorescent bulbs because it gives you a better lighting source to look at how these colors differentiate from each other. Okay. Oh, by the way, I would normally wear gloves with this as well. I do have them, so I might as well use them because your hands have oils.
I thought you only use gloves for shaking hands.
Well, it's just my. Oh, thank you for that. Well, I find that I work for the city of Toronto, and there's some public health things that I got to go with, and this garage is one of them. But we won't report you. Okay, greens. So let's see if this. Whoa, I almost spilled that. So let's see if the greens do anything. This did have an effect with the gray, but it's really subtle.
Yeah, but it's kind of brought those panels together.
It has brought them all together. Now, we talked earlier. Well, let's see how we can again do the whole what unifying. Yeah, that's what you used before, unifying. So let's go over here and try the green. I think it's mixed up. Go to the bottom of the bottle again. You can see this. Still not mixed up, and I find some of these, maybe it's the earlier, with all due respect, quality control. Some of the bottles, the consistency is very thin. Some of them are thicker. Yeah. The earlier ones, I don't know. Okay, now we're gonna try this green, which is the MIG filter green for gray green, or something similar to that effect. Now, I'm applying it thick to this model again. You wouldn't normally apply it that thick. But see how thick it is? This one's really thick. This one's really dramatic. Unload your brush if it's too thick. And it's a little too deep in color, so let's thin it a bit. And again, drag it out because you don't want any pooling. That's why you really want a flat surface with this stuff. It is going in some of the crevices, but this one you can actually see the brush strokes because the filter consistency in this one is fairly thick, and you can actually see the brush. If you see the brush strokes, then kind of go in one way, but you try to want to avoid brush strokes. Now, when I look at that, I don't really like it.
I don't know. I think it's kind of neat.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's giving it a moss effect. So if you had it in a diorama in a swamp,
but it's
different.
It makes that panel stand out a little bit.
Should I leave it or should I?
Dealer's choice.
Different. Let's go back.
I think it's interesting.
Let's see.
Using a green on this or anything outside of because your colors are basically gray and beige.
Correct.
So like the gray and brown filters, I think would be safe choices.
So. I think so.
Using a green, it's interesting.
It's interesting, right? So, but let's take that, Dave, for a moment and go back with the gray that I used earlier and see if that does anything. See, I'm mixing it. It's still wet. I don't know. And if you don't like it, you can take it off. I don't know if it's diffusing it a bit. it is adding interest to it, but if I was to use the green, I would do it all over the model. It's not bad, but
I think having one wedge that sticks out like that.
Yeah.
And that's again, it's your preference.
Yes, right,
It's
exactly.
your choice. Whatever looks right to your eye.
And I think it's too heavy, so I'm just going to lighten it up. But still, I'm lighting this up with the gray. You could let it dry with the hair dryer, but let's just keep going and then apply a new filter, and that would really lighten it up faster than putting this gray over this wet green. But that's a little better.
Yeah, you've cut it back.
You've cut it back with the gray.
Now those colors on the bottles, like we'll say green for gray green, or I mean those are suggestions.
Correct.
Right. It's not, again. There's no hard and fast rules that you can't use gray, like a green on a white or a beige or a gray.
Absolutely.
It's just whatever looks right to you. I mean, there's suggestions on what you could use them on, but they're just that.
I can't remember which issue, but I did a article in, oh gosh, I hope I get this right. It might have been in Fine Scale, I don't even know. But I think it was Fine Scale Modeler, where I did a whole article on filters. And I think
it was Fine Scale.
Yeah. I took a bunch of color chips, and I took beige ones, like in the color range of dark to light, and I took some green ones and some brown ones, and I chose different colors and tried to see what's the effect that a red would have over a blue finish, right? You're right, there's suggestions. I think if there's any cardinal rule, try to keep it within, but you could try pink on this and see if you want.
Just a little warm, like a red. You can do a red tone, like a little warm the colors up a bit, right?
Yep.
Because you've got red on there with the decals.
Yeah.
Not decals.
Decals, yes, decals.
Decals.
Decalé. I'm from Decalé, Quebec. Okay, so that's green. A little more green here. So I'm now doing panels.
So now you're using the filters instead of unifying to make things stand out.
Yes.
So you're kind of using both.
Correct. See? Now I'm just focusing on the green. I got a bottle of the green and the gray out. Let's see what it looks like over this beige decal. I don't know. Is it doing anything? It's not doing much. I don't know.
It's very subtle. Very subtle.
That one's about as useful as German ice cream rations at Stalingrad, but let's keep going. Let's try this gray here. Gray on this, that's really subtle. Now let's open up some more. I don't know, what do we got here? We have more of a light beige. Oh, here we go. We have a dark brown. We have a very dark brown, and we have a beige. So let's do this beige since, shake that up. I didn't put a BB in this one, so. And Robert's just going over the surface to show you the effect I'm getting so far. Smell that filter, eh?
Yeah, we need to get some.
You need to, guys. You want to be safe with this stuff too, because it does have an odor. So do work in a well-ventilated place. Now I'm working with a beige, the same brush, but now this bottle, Dave, there's hardly any sediment in here. It's very light. Again, I don't know if it's right.
I find these things have varying shelf lives.
See, look at this, Robert. See, it's going on the paper. Very little. I don't know if it's shelf life, but maybe, I don't know.
Or the different pigments they use.
Could be. Let's go over here. This isn't doing much at all. Well, it is.
No,
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I can see it from here.
Yeah, it is, because it's it's a beige color.
Yeah,
now,
warming it up a bit.
Yeah, it's warming it up a bit. Could I have done this with an airbrush? Yeah, perhaps, because look, I've applied it here through a filter, here with an airbrush. It's slightly different. Different effect. This one had no effect at all.
Different means to the same end.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong. But I do think that there's a time where you should stop. Like guys, I find that you've got everything from hairspray, chipping washes, filters. You don't have to use every one on a model.
Yeah, you can. I fully agree. You can get lost.
You get lost,
and then the different effects kind of like you just lose it. It becomes a sea of stuff. And you can't. Yeah.
Right.
You can't really differentiate.
And I think some guys will say, "Well, I've got to use this technique." You don't have to. Yeah. I think some guys I know don't even dry brush. I still do, but some don't even do that. Okay, so we're still just working some of these areas. There's less on the brush now, but again, there's no effect there. I'll go back to this dark gray. Dark gray over, now that's the beige one. Go dark gray over that. There's a bit of change. Now, this is the canopy area where I use the masking. I would stay away from filters over here because I don't want the filter to creep under the tape and affect.
Yeah, it'll cause problems.
It'll cause problems. So
eventually craze the.
Yeah,
plastic,
let's be careful about that. So I won't apply any filters over the. And by the way, this area here is also canopy mask, so I'll stay away from that as well. Now, what does this green do? Let's get this green going here. Over, say, the red. I don't know. That's now this is still wet. I have no idea how that's going to dry, but I don't know what the heck.
Yeah, it'll alter the red and create some variety in the red, right?
Right. Okay. So let's just let's just flip this over a bit because where was it here? Oh yeah. Dave was just criticizing my modeling skills, but look, there's lifting decal here. Now,
I was merely pointing out a irregularity.
Well, I'm not doing them anymore if you keep those comments up. Anyway, so no, Dave's a good friend of mine. All right, so there's a bit of decal lifting here. Do check these when you come back because what I do is I put a couple of pinholes in it and go back over with the Solvaset. So just be careful when you do, because I was doing this fairly quickly. Now, by the way, this piece, I'm just going to stop on the filters for one moment. This panel piece, as I said before, this is the top of the model. And it goes in there. Now, I'm not an expert on Millennium Falcons, but again, these techniques, by the way, guys, it can be any modeling subject. Aircraft, armor. I'm just using it on a sci-fi subject. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind that it's not just for this gray subject. But one thing with a Falcon, I know some pictures that maybe you know, Dave. Are these vents with stuff like it's black down here? Is that what I've
seen? Yeah, I've seen on the studio model that there is kind of exhaust. It looks like they're exhaust, but I don't know for sure. Well,
maybe someone can comment, but I'm going to take a chance and kind of make this darker. Now, I've actually started, guys. I've applied, maybe this is a segue into washes. I applied this, see this really gritty stuff on these fins or whatever they're called? I used my own mixture of a wash to apply. This went on over the gloss surface, but I didn't remove it.
No, you just put it on.
I just put it on.
That's a really nice effect.
So it's really gritty, but then that's a nice effect here, but then I want to blend it with this. So then what I'll do later is I'll apply more of the washes in these areas and maybe some even dark filters in here to get this harsh effect blended in with the rest of the model. But I wanted to let you guys know that that's a wash that's applied without any removal over a gloss finish, flat applied on top of it. And if you do apply filters on top of this, it'll even get darker. But I just want to show you the effect, right?
No,
I just figured I'd leave it. You can use it on armor too, maybe on lower hulls, and I'll show you the mixture of the wash that I use this maybe in the next step. So
I mean, this is really kind of a big piece of armor in space.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the finishing techniques and whatnot, it's not as clean as you would apply to an aircraft.
Totally.
Most aircraft, right?
Totally. Now, I do a lot of Japanese and Italian aircraft. Japanese, of course, these weathering techniques I find would be really great on, Japanese Zeros and in Buna or flying in the tropics of New Guinea. You can do this stuff. But see, so far it's dried without an hair dryer, and you can see that there's now more.
Yeah, there's more. It looks
stuff
great.
happening. Yeah. And again, we've only done modulation and filters. Now we're going to go into washes. Okay? So I'll be back in a moment and talk about washes. Okay, so just a couple of comments before I go into washes. See, this was that filter I applied with the green. It's still wet. Let it dry a bit if you find that it's too thick. And you can convert it to a streaking effect, you see? That's a streaking effect now. It's no longer a filter effect because you've left it. Or with a completely dry brush, maybe that one is too streaky and it's no longer a streaking effect, right? So it's really blending and playing and whatever. Or you can take these streaks out completely, dry brush, and remove them completely. Now this is an older brush. I find with older brushes, Dave, that bristles are really better for streaking, right?
Yeah, you get more
wider effect.
Yeah.
Or you can again do the whole thing. It's entirely up to you. You see how I can play with it? I'm going to leave this streaked. I don't know. Take this and now, let's streak over here. Right? Let's streak over here. You can play around with it. Okay?
Streaking all over the place.
Streaking all over. I'm streaking all over the place. In the 70s, streaking was running around nude, wasn't it? Streakers?
Yeah, it had a different meaning back then.
It had a different meaning back then. Okay. I model in the nude. I don't know if it helps, but just saying.
Thank God not on camera.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, we won't do that. That's a children's
It's a family
channel.
show.
It's a family show.
Family show.
All right. Now, washes. You can buy these as washes. I use them a lot. Or I think Mike Rinaldi, he's moved entirely to oils. Right?
Yeah,
Didn't
last
you say?
third, yeah.
Hey, Mike, it's a shout. I know I've taught everything that you know, but okay, stop the comments because no, Mike, you're a master modeler, and and I know I was watching one of your episodes where you talked about moving to oils, so I'll talk a bit about that. Mike is right. I like the traditional. These are Winsor Newton oils. I think you can get them in the United States. In Canada, they're Winsor Newton oils, not the water-based acrylics, and they come in different series. The series numbers will depend on the quality of the oil. I like this one. When you mentioned a go-to earlier episode about the pencils, I like Winsor Newton Raw Umber number 554. That's what I like as the first go-to wash. This is a kind of like a dark brown. Right?
On the series number, is it higher the series number, the higher the quality of the paint, or the higher the pigmentation, or the finer the pigmentation?
Something like that, but I never really understood which series is which. But you're right. I think it is. I think so.
I just use the Abtelling 502 stuff.
Those are nice too, absolutely.
But you pay a little bit more for them, I think.
I do find though, I don't know, I think Sandy was mentioning this, you do, but I find these guys have a long shelf life.
Yeah,
these Winsor Newtons have a long shelf life. Now, okay, do you guys remember these? These are, what are these, Robert? You're into 35 millimeter? Is that what they were? These are the 35 millimeter film canisters. Now, they're pretty hard to get now, but if you go to a camera store, they might give you some because there's still some people using these. I find that I like these for doing my washes. Now, why do I use one for? Because when I do a wash, I like to use one canister, and that's the wash I use. It's the same consistency, it's the same ratio. But when you put them in these, and I'll show you the mix in a moment because I've got a clean one here. This one was a wash I created with Raw Umber probably about a month ago. This what I'm going to show you is I use that together. Okay. So I will show you in a moment. These they do have a shelf life. If you want a nice clean wash, here I'm spilling it all over the desk. No, it's not bad. There's about maybe a third, maybe a half in this 35 milliliter paint cup. I like Humbrol with doing this technique with Winsor Newton because I've just liked the consistency. Now with about a half of this thing full, I would go, and it's your eye, right? I would go with a pea size, maybe 2 of them. Sometimes I add black if I really want a dark wash. We'll put 2 in for now because it's probably easier to add more. Put the cap back on and shake this up. So this is a fresh one. This one I left for a month, and I'll show you the one that I left for a month is this technique. It's really gritty. The sediment just dries and the I guess the thinner evaporates, so you've got a much more grimier wash. This one's a fresh one. This one's the one I use these on aircraft. So keep shaking, and again this stuff smells, so
yeah, it's a thinner, it's the so the odorless thinners are a little bit less harsh, the
odorless thinners are, but when I tried odorless thinners in this mix, I kind of like this mix better because it seemed to get the paint into crevices a lot
I think the odorless thinners are a little bit softer.
Yes.
So they might not work as well in terms of diluting things.
Yes. I think you're right.
But they don't stink as much.
Now when you use these, always shake them. Now watch, after we do the videos, everyone's going out to camera stores looking for these guys. You can get the, Robert, you can get the what, dollar store? They have some with the caps on top of the lids, I think you mentioned. Okay, this is the gritty one, this is a good one. Now, the gritty one, this is a wash now. Now, remember I said to apply washes over a gloss finish. Let's just, see how thick it is? Because it's aged. This is a thick wash over a flat surface. It might act as a filter, but let's see what happens. Let's go over on this side. Look at that. This has been sitting in this thing for a month. Yeah. So I wouldn't use this as a filter.
No,
that's
a little bit thick.
That's way too much.
But I bet it makes a good wash in the panel lines.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But we'll kind of remove that. But now look, here's the other thing, as I'm doing this, which reminded me. When you use this mixture, now this is the old jar that's settled a lot, you're going to get a grimier effect. You can use a hair dryer, and we got one here, but for a moment. You can actually use this, see, as weathering. See? You can take your brush and you can leave some of that guck in the... It's up to you. Now, I'm not going to do that but that's a pretty heavy effect with the panel.
You could do it on a few select panels. That looks good.
Yes, you could do it on armor model. But in this case, because this is really, I think it's overwhelming, I'm going to remove it. But I just wanted to show you guys, because this is live. Well, is it live? Not real well.
Well, it's one take.
One take. Let's blend it a bit more. Now, you notice that this stuff's thicker. What I sometimes do is if you don't have a hair dryer, let this stuff dry on the surface for, like hour and a half, 2 hours. But beware, if in this mixture of Humbrol and this stuff and the Winsor Newton, if you let that dry for 24 hours, you're not getting that off. It's not like the pencils where you can reapply and reactivate. You're not reactivating this stuff.
That's a good point, Hart.
Right? So if now you can use this once it's dry for about 2 hours, then if you want, you can streak it. See? You're using streaking with oils. Now you've got the MIG products, all these other, but you can use, there's a lot of stuff left on this brush, there's a lot of stuff left on this surface. You can use it to streak. Right? Let it dry for about maybe 2 hours. And you'll find that now I'm applying this on a flat surface. I would be applying these washes, and I'll show you in a moment here, on a gloss surface. But because I've applied it on a flat surface, it's really acting like a quasi-filter and a wash all at once. And on a flat surface, even on a gloss surface, you can streak it with what's left on the brush. See, look, it's very subtle. Okay? So now, gloss surface. Gloss surface, I would use the fresh stuff. And this stuff I just mixed. No, this is a gloss area. Look at the difference. It's going in only the crevices. The glossier, the more the paint will only settle in the crevices. And you can just... Now, this is two little pea sizes to half a bottle. Try to find the mixture that ultimately will work, because the effect you're looking for is a capillary action, that it's only going in the crevices. Now, if you want this effect and you don't want it acting like a filter, you can use a hair dryer and dry that. But I find if you use a hair dryer, it's going to push the recessed paint away. What I do is I just do something else, let it dry for 2 hours, and then come back with a finer brush that's dry and just clean it up. Clean up the highlighted areas.
Remove the wash from the... Yeah.
You're moving the wash in areas that you don't want to move.
You could use a sponge or something too.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. Gives a different effect. Gives a bit of a tattered effect. But if you like this, I find this technique I use in aircraft. So you apply this whole wash on a wing, settles into the the crevices and the panel lines. And then if you take the rest off with a clean Humbrol, flat or pointed brush. Now this is still wet, so you really can't see it. Maybe we can come back a little later, but you can see that in the light, it's settling only in the details. See? This one, it's the whole thing. Because this is a flat finish, that's a gloss finish. Okay? And I'm just gonna I could add more if I want more of a deeper wash. And again, this is the fresh stuff. See, there's a heavy look. I actually like that. It's a heavy wash, and I'll clean it up later. Because I want that effect here, I could now this is a flat finish still, but it doesn't hurt because I want this area to be dark. I apply all this fresh filter, this fresh wash, sorry, in these details here.
So question, Arp, so on this, so this is predominantly a gray model, I
Yep,
guess.
yep.
Why use a dark brown wash? Why not use a black wash?
You're right. That's a good question. You could use a pure black wash. That's a stark contrast. I kind of like the raw umber as my go-to because it gives that patina look that's not overwhelming. You're right, on modulation you want it overwhelming. If this is going to be a wash that settles in the crevices, I want it to be a little bit more refined.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think staying away from like the absolute blacks.
Yeah.
I think it's a good rule of thumb.
Now, you notice that I'm applying this wash on a flat surface, but I kind of like the effect that it's a bit of a filter, it's a bit of a wash, and it's kind of, see how it's blending in with this stuff, right? You can do a little here. It's live camera, one take. See, it's acting as a bit of a filter. But if I gloss this, and I really only wanted these, then I would gloss it and go back over and remove the top
That's a
colors.
nice effect.
That's not bad, eh?
That's a really nice effect.
It's giving this, because I want this graduation. That's the thing with the episodes we're doing here is we're kind of doing things on the fly. And if it looks okay. Now, I'm just using my eye because I just don't want, I'm just kind of doing it all over the place to give it that darker, grittier look. And I'll fix that decal lifting thing later. And I'm using the residual wash from the brush to streak it. And you notice because it's going on a flat surface, it's really keep staying on the surface. And if I don't like some of it, I come back with a wet thing and just clean up. See how I'm cleaning up the areas where I don't want the wash to settle.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah,
See the effect?
The middle section is really
Yep.
pronounced dark, yeah.
Right? And just add a little more so we can move on to the next steps. Now, would I do it this fast? Well, I don't know. I'm a pretty fast modeler, but you might want to take your time, see if it sits right. Now, I did this one. I want to do this. I want to do this. I don't want to just do this because then in my eye, it's unbalanced.
So you're going dark in those areas because of the exhaust stains that are coming out of these vents? Is that?
Yeah.
Now, would you go over those with would you airbrush like soot or something?
I will. Absolutely, I will. Yeah, absolutely, Dave. You're building up and weathering.
Yeah.
It's easier to build up than to overdo it and take away. If I did an airbrush of black, oh my God, it's covered everything.
Yeah, I agree.
I got to go back and.
That looks good. That looks really nice.
Okay.
Nice effect.
Oh, by the way, maybe we'll do it a little later. But if you want to do the airbrushing of exhaust, I like Tamiya smoke because it's already opaque, right? You're not using a pure black and oh my God, it's just covered everything.
Yeah. They build it up.
You build it up. That's building it up, and you can see that there's. I don't know. You see it in the light. There's now this brownish stuff that's kind of, and it's see the difference. This has it. This doesn't. So I'm just gonna leave it.
That really looks good.
I'm just gonna leave it. I'll add a little bit more off camera, and then we'll go from there.
I have to say that I was so impressed with this model that you're working on, Harv, that I went out and bought the 1/4
yes,
scale.
right.
One from the Rise of Skywalker, so that'll be a kit I'll be working on. But I'll be using a lot of the same techniques on that. Yeah, it looks really good.
It'd be neat to do yours, and then just to see the effects of the two together, right? Oh, I did forget to mention as I'm looking at this. You see, I forgot to mention. This model lights up. You see these are bulbs here. See? Landing light bulbs. This is for the loading ramp. Put tape over them. Otherwise,
Mask them off, yeah.
Mask them off, gentlemen. Don't forget.
Otherwise, those lights aren't going to be terribly effective.
Those lights are not going to be effective if you put the color. Oops, right? So always plan your model, as I said before. Now, just the final thing with a gun. The gun is also, I left gloss. You can see this time, I like this 554 raw umber because it gives that patina look. It doesn't make it look like it's just right out of the... Right? You can see it's settling only in the crevices. Now, when you do this technique... Oh, I just bumped the camera. We're going live here. When you do this technique, I find that if you want that paint to settle in these details, leave it at that angle. If you move the gun up, that wash will... Right? So keep it that. Let it dry for 2 hours. I don't use a hairbrush on this technique because I want the wash to settle. Let it dry for 2 hours, wipe away the excess where you don't want it, and then repeat on the other side, okay? And let that settle at that angle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then that way you're guaranteed a fine wash to settle only in. Now I'm doing this because it's still wet, but there's a little too much on the barrel. You can take a fine brush but it'll be much better if you let this dry for 2 hours and then do the clean thinner to take it off settling.
So how much time would you say you have? How many hours would you say you have where you can still reactivate it with the thinner, the enamel thinner?
I think great question. I think the longest I've let this stuff dry while still being able to reactivate or move it around is only probably around, using this mix, maybe 3-4 hours at the most. Then it's down, gentlemen. You're not getting it back. You're not getting it back. So be very careful with this technique. And just one more time to just demonstrate that again is a gloss area. It's maybe hard to see in the camera, but I kind of want this area gloss because I want all these details to settle in. The more you apply and the higher the gloss, the deeper it'll settle in the recesses. Okay? You can see the same thing over your decal areas and gloss, but this is a flat area right now. Now again, this one, see how it's settling because the model's flipped this way by gravity? You'd want to put it on a flat surface, let this stuff settle. Let it settle at this angle, and you might want to prop up your model. See, there's some details in there. You know, you can see the details. See there? It's going in the crevices. All right? Now you can see the difference between that and over here where there's nothing. There's some brown patina to that, but that's what I want. You could paint these details any colors you want. I just left them all gray, but that's because this, when you apply it over different colors, it's kind of nice to have that, but I didn't do little detailed colors in there. Let's just leave it.
Looks good.
Okay, so let's end up with the wash, and then I'll just do a bit of penciling, and we'll go from there. Okay, now that we've applied the filters and washes, I was having a conversation with our producer, Robert, and just to clarify, I think these are exhausts. I might be wrong. That's why there's nothing up here, and there's this effect of an exhaust and blowing down, but you guys can put in the comments whether I'm right or not. The other thing that Robert mentioned is a good point, is this Millennium Falcon vehicle is flying this way. You might want to treat these surfaces that face, right, that face the forward motion of the vehicle might get a little bit more grittier on this less. So think about those things. But the one thing now that the filters have dried is I actually don't. I think this green filter is probably too much contrast. It's not within the tone of the grays and the beiges. I'm not too fond of it. So once it's dried a bit, just take some thinner and just kind of take it off a bit, right? Just to dilute. But that's my preference. I could apply more green over here, but we'll just give me a demonstration. If you don't like it, you can just take it. You could actually use a Q-tip to get it off or anything else. Do I have any? I don't have any Q-tips. I do. So you can dip that in you can just kind of wash it off too. It's taking a little bit more off, so it's not as obvious. it's entirely your... Let's take some of that and do that here. There's still some green in there, but that's not bad. It's a lot less. See? The streaking's gone with the Q-tip. I steal these from my wife's makeup kit. She's always ringing, where are my Q-tips? I said, I'm using them on Millennium Falcon. You can have them back if you want, but... Okay. So that's better. Now, pencils. Now Dave's talked about pencils as well. What colors do you use? Same theory as the filters. Try anything. Now, this is a gray, and I'm using gray blue set here. I don't know what it's going to do, but let's take this bright. This one is light blue. I have no idea. Now I apply these in a flat finish. You can draw with these on here to chipping effects. These are different than Prismacolor. I find that they're a little more softer, eh, Dave?
Yeah,
than the Prismacolor.
The Prismacolors don't dissolve in water.
Nope.
Right?
Now I'm using these dry. Now I don't know if this chipping up. See, you can use them dry as chipping effects. You can use a hairspray. Does the blue work? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. It's entirely up to you. But I'd sharpen this a bit more. I didn't bring my pencil sharpener. Use them dry and use a chipping. I would also coat these later, but I start the chipping in the crevices, and you can do a bit up here. But you see, because it's a flat surface, it sticks. And then
you couldn't use the pencils like that on a gloss surface.
No.
Yeah, nothing
would stick.
Onto, right? Just like pigments, you can't use pigments on a gloss surface.
Absolutely. Now I haven't applied pigment, but here's a dark blue. See? Let's see what happens when you take some water and... I don't like it. I like that.
When that dries, though, that'll lighten up.
Yep. Now here's the thing: if you take these pencils, now they're still used dry. Just apply it dry. Take your finger, dip it in the water with the. Dave taught me this with the dish liquid in there. Kind of move it with your finger. Look. See, it's subtler. Finger painting. Now that's too. See, that's an unnatural look. So you take a Kleenex or a sponge.
Or you could move those around with a brush too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean.
Yeah.
Very versatile.
See?
Yeah,
it's very versatile.
Yeah, it's a neat looking effect.
It's a neat. Now, dry pencils on a surface that's dry. Take a finger with a bit of water on it, mix it around. Use your fingers to muck it around. Different effect than using a brush, because it's a random effect. The only thing is, if I do this here, I'm gonna want to repeat it elsewhere. It looks too artificial. Oh, that's the only one that's happening there. Well, it's up to you.
Yeah, you could do that.
Right? Now this is light blue. Does it work on a sci-fi model? Yeah, perhaps. Right? But I've only been using 2 colors here.
It's artistic license.
It's artistic license. Do I need to do more? It's entirely up to you. I think the trick here is when to stop. Right? I said before, 5 or 6 filters, that's it. Otherwise, you're done.
Yeah.
All right? So now you can wet these. And Dave used this technique on his BT7. This is the one with the dish liquid in. Not a lot. You can dip your pencil in here, and it's wet. And you can also... Now see, look, the pencil's wet this time. So it's already going on wet. Now, this is the dark blue. If you were to leave this like this and let it dry that way, that's pretty harsh. But if that's what you want...
But when it dries, though, that will light. It looks harsh now, but that'll lighten up significantly when it dries, and then you can reactivate it, right?
Reactivate it.
I mean, that's the nice thing. Until you put something on top of it,
right?
Like a coat, a gloss coat, or a matte coat, you can reactivate it indefinitely.
Yeah, but now let's say I don't like that. Wet your finger, and you can spread around or do streaks. Oh, look at those streaks with my.
Yeah.
I'm using my middle finger, guys, because I don't. Oh, sorry, that's streaking with my middle finger, right? But you see, it's subtle techniques.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you stop with the versatility? I've used them dry. I've now used them wet. I've seen you use them wet. We could probably do a whole half hour on these.
I mean, you can do any. I mean, you can use them. You can create a filter.
You can,
Right?
absolutely,
you
you
can. Use them
can.
as a filter. You can use them as streaking, chipping, like you did.
Yep.
You can use them to add, like, if you want to create a bit of a stain in one
Yep.
in one corner, you could do that too, right?
See?
They're extremely.
So let's take your comment there. Let's use a filter. So now I'm just putting it as a liquid on this thing here, and then this then goes on the model.
Yeah.
Now it's a different technique. See?
Yeah.
Now by the way, this too I left glossy on purpose. Look, it's beading.
Yeah.
See? See? It's beading. It's not what you want, because I left this part glossy because I was actually going to use some washes in this area. I haven't got to it.
So the same rules apply, right? If you're using
Yep.
this as a filter, make sure you're doing it on a matte surface.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And by the way, if you are using Kleenex on your model, don't forget it leaves residue. I use a duster can to get all the dust off, right? See, but I like using these on a flat surface. It doesn't work on a glossy surface, right? Whatever colors you use is entirely up to you. I've used blue here, not bad. This gives the effect like there's an undercoat of a blue primer or something. You see how fine it is? Can the camera pick that up?
Yes.
Right?
That looks good.
Right? And that was only in 5 minutes, and I've demonstrated the use of them dry, the use of them wet, and then the use of them off the model wet with the puddling itself. And I'm just kind of doing it ad lib. You cannot get this effect, by the way, gentlemen, with the regular colored pencils. Don't try it, because I've tried it. These are some formula in them that allows the softness of this pencil to do all these techniques. Prismacolors don't work. Do I still use Prismacolors? Yeah. I find that some of the Prismacolors are really good are some of the blacks and silvers.
For chipping?
For chipping.
Yeah.
You got it. For chipping. Right? And then they're still good for that, but they're not good for this blending technique. Okay? So we're going to come back and talk a little bit about, let's see, well, I'm going to do this for the whole model, and then we'll finish up with perhaps some dry brushing, which is a common technique. Maybe we'll do something else. Maybe we'll accentuate this stuff. Actually, you know what I'll do? Since I'm still finishing up here, I'll take this dark gray, right, put it in the water here, and you know, you can play with this area of battle damage. I'm using my fingers. Right? See, look. Chipping. Lots of chipping. Chipping's, I don't know about you, Dave, but I find if I don't do a lot of chipping, because if I do that, I kind of got to do it on the rest of them.
Yeah, it's,
you know?
I used to, chipping, I don't use it as much.
I don't use it as much, yeah. Totally, right?
Unless it's to hide a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the sign of a great modeler is how well you hide your mistakes, right? So there's a lot of stuff happening here. I haven't done any hairspray on this. I don't know if I will. We can save that to an armor project next. But that's, I think, good enough to give you a sense. Now, once this is all dried, you see the filters here? It's quite a difference on here, where you've seen a bit of the green, a bit of the beige. I did not apply filters on this side at all. See, there's stuff happening here, but it's not as, I don't think it's as 3D effect.
Yeah, I think
I haven't done anything
The filters just add another layer of, it's very subtle, but it's another layer of depth.
It's another layer of depth. Our apologies. We'll try to get the lighting here a bit better. I might buy another lamp, but I can certainly see it. And I'll post some photos of this in my photo booth with proper lighting, and then we'll have Robert post them in this video so you can see what they look like under proper photographic light. So why don't we just end it there, and I guess the next steps will be just the final touch-ups, and we'll go from there. So thanks again for watching, and we'll be back with some final touches to the web.